Hey, David Raffoff here. Hope you're having a good day. Today I thought it'd be fun to look at just a new simple CSS framework. I'm always hesitant to go and just like grab some gigantic CSS framework that covers every case, but I'm looking to just put together a really small website. It's probably going to be on using Gatsby, but I thought I'd just start with just basic, HTML, CSS, and no JavaScript out of the gate. Anyway, one of the frameworks I ran across was this thing called Pico.css, and yeah, I was pretty impressed with it. It's nice and simple, but it kind of takes the main things that I'd be concerned with into account if I was going to like try to just do one from scratch. So anyway, I've got their site pulled up here. It's Pico.css, and I'm just gonna walk through some of this really quickly. So they give you a few options for how to install it. You can download the minified file and host it yourself in your locally, or you can just link out to CDN, which is what I'm doing for playing around with it. And then alternatively, you can use npm to install it, and then just reference the node module path directly. But just for demonstration purposes, it's probably easiest just to start with this CDN because that's going to be available to everyone. And then they give you some starter HTML you can use here. So that's kind of where I've started, but I'm going to go through actually what it looks like first because I think that is the most helpful thing. So yeah, here they just say, it's a minimal CSS framework for semantic HTML. The whole thing's under 8K. And you can see here they give some different examples of just writing it and what the output's going to look like. And it's, it's nice and clean. And the actual HTML that they're using looks nice and semantic. They do include some minimal sets of, I think, SVG icons. We'll go through the things that it depends on below. But yeah, nice to know that there's, easy access to some icons. And then one cool thing is that all of these support both light and dark mode by default. So if we wanted to, even here, I think we can just go and toggle. So I think I'm on light now. I think if I switch to dark, is it going to switch? Okay, well their site's not set up that way, which is interesting. But if we look at one of these previews, we should be able to do that. So let's just open this preview. You can see here they give you the controls for switching. So right now I think it's on auto. So I think my browser's defaulting to dark mode. If I switch here, I can go back and forth between light and dark. I think those look pretty good. And I'm sure it's, having looked at the CSS a little bit already, I think it's pretty easy to tweak these colors too if you want to do something different. So yeah, but basically I just like the layout's nice and simple. I like that they don't, one thing I'm looking for with this website I'm setting up is I want to make it just super simple. I don't want to have a bunch of crazy layouts or breakpoints where I completely change up the way it looks. I want it to pretty much just be a single column. And part of that's just because I think people overcomplicate websites these days. I think it'll just be easier and more accessible to use it across devices. I want it to look really good on phones. It's actually my main concern is that it looks good on phones and non-desktop devices. So yeah, I just like the look of it. It's just very simple. They haven't gone crazy. They have support for kind of all the basic stuff you would want to have support for. I also like just the ratios on like the changes in the headings look pretty good. And none of the headings are just like ginormous. And then yeah, the buttons look nice. I mean, they give you a bunch of different options for filled and outlined, high contrast and low contrast. Form controls all look pretty decent. It doesn't show here because I have the browser set to be fairly wide, but They also do a nice layout feature for anything that might have to scroll horizontally. So I think by default their figure element will allow things to scroll horizontally. Let's see. There we go. So I think this is it. I think this table's inside of a figure, and the figures, I think they have overflow X auto maybe. So that's kind of nice. And yeah, just they have some other basic stuff in here. But yeah, just things like articles look good. They have some simple interactive elements in here, so like accordions. And you can see the arrows on that are kind of nice and animated. But yeah, I thought it just was a nice starting point, essentially. So I'm going to back out of here. And I thought, too, it might be helpful, like, for people who are new or somewhat new, might be useful to just, like, talk through, like, how I thought this was a reasonable thing to start with. Because, man, in the past, just CSS frameworks have gotten so big and bloated and give you every option you could ever possibly want to use in, like, building a gigantic app. So there's a lot of things I liked about this. You know, one is that it's like pretty easy to easy to customize too. Like you can see here, it's set up where you could just pick a color and like everything's going to pick that up. And that's because they relied on just a simple root primary color throughout the CSS. And then they also explain like if you want to override some of those defaults where you would go in and do that. And then they're using Sass, specifically like the SCSS flavor of Sass. And they've done a pretty good job of cleanly, cleanly splitting out the variables so that they're easy to change, which I think is really awesome. And then you can use different flavors of this. So there's a version where I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this. They try to, by default, style the elements the way that they think they should be styled. So there's a version of this that you can use where there are no classes, except if you're going to use them for like modifiers to mark something, say as like a warning or something like that. So there's a version of this where you shouldn't even have to use like classes to style the elements. And then they have a couple different kinds of containers. So by default, it's going to be centered, but if you want it to be fluid, they have a fluid version. Yeah, so centered viewport, fluid viewport. So those are nice options. Like I'm not sure which one I'm going to use. I think I'll probably use centered. I don't need the website to like blow out to go edge to edge on big screens or anything. And part of trying to make it work well on phones first primarily is going to be, you know, not using really wide layouts, just assuming I've got a single column most of the time. And then yeah, all the breakpoints are like really clearly defined here. And I went ahead and looked at the underlying Sass files for this, and they also did a great job of setting this up in one place in variables, so it's like easy to switch if you want to change that up. It's got nice grid support, so you can remove columns, you can add columns. And then yeah, here's that horizontal scroller I was mentioning earlier for scrolling within figures. Yeah, heading typography, that looks pretty nice to me. Just as a visual hierarchy. And they've just thought about stuff too. Like sometimes people will, and I'm guilty of this too, have like main headings and subheadings, and they won't do things like wrap them in an H group. And so it's just cool to see that they've taken the semantic markup seriously in here. Probably more seriously than I would if I was just trying to do something quick for a blog or website. Yeah, block quotes look great. Buttons look great. Links, that's interesting. Looks like their link styles visually more like a button. Oh, I see. This one's like, that's kind of interesting. Buttons in pure HTML. I see. So this is if you're going to do semantic buttons, and then I guess this is if you want to make your links look as if they're buttons, you give it role button. And yeah, they've got secondary and contrasts, which is nice. Outline variants. Yeah, I like the forms too. I think they did a good job with just keeping the forms nice and simple. And you can see that they're wrapping all of their inputs and labels, which is nice. So yeah, I'm not going to go through every single detail here, but just generally, it's clear that they've focused on semantic HTML. They focused on keeping you from having to throw class names all over the place, which to each their own. But I struggle a little bit with some of the newer utilities that are getting popular, like Tailwind, where you have to really just put classes all over the place. So I kind of like that they have given at least give you the option by default to just focus on writing HTML and not have to go too crazy with CSS classes. And then yeah, if you want to use it, they have some extra kind of components, I guess. I don't know. I haven't looked exactly into how they set these up, but if you want things like sliders, or if you want accordions, or like select all, deselect all kind of stuff, they've got some of that built in. But in general, yeah, just like the look of it. I like that it also has the light mode, dark mode built in by default. That's kind of like a number one request from users. And a lot of some of what I'm going to be putting on the site is going to be like code related too. So I think coders in general tend to like the dark mode for looking at code, just because a little bit easier on the eyes. And then yeah, if we hop over to just the actual code on GitHub, it's pretty organized in a pretty simple way. They do have some dependencies that I'm trying to see how they set them up. Okay, so this doesn't really handle their dependencies. They must have just baked them in. But they do mention what their dependencies are. I'm trying to see if I can find them here really quick. Maybe it's in examples. Huh, that's weird. Yeah, I don't know where I saw that earlier. Maybe it's somewhere in their GitHub project. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so yeah, here's the things, third-party resources and things they depend on. So they use Feather, normalized CSS, and a sanitized CSS. And then I guess in their documentation, they use Type It, Most Visible, and Font Awesome. So anyway, I'm glad they listed all that stuff out down there. So yeah, if we just dig in, basically there's this, the CSS folder is going to be like the built CSS files, and then the minified versions, like the distributions essentially, either minified or not. So that if you want to just see everything in one place, maybe that's a good place to look. Like if we open one of these, you can see this is going to be a pretty big file. But if we go to the individual pieces, it's pretty easy to understand what they were doing. So if we go here, you can see, like, let's just go to content. So like tables or let's just go to typography. That should be an easy one. Yeah, you can see here they've done a good job of splitting out all the different elements and how they're styled. And this is pretty close to how I would have written it if I had to write my own. Although I'm not, they're using some SCSS stuff that I'm not familiar with. But yeah, you can see here they're heavily referencing variables all over the place, which is kind of nice because it just helps separate it gets a lot of values that would normally just be like hard coded that may be related out, and allows you to put them in a place where you can like clearly relate them and reuse them. Let's see what they did for code. Yeah, so similar scenario here. They're setting up all their kind of elements and the sub elements, and then using variables heavily for the coloring and the font weight and line height and size and stuff like that. And then we should be able to look at the variables file, and we'll see all those values defined. So in here, they've kind of in one place just set up a lot of the variables that they're using. I would have expected that to be longer. It must be somewhere else. Let's try to see if they had one within here. But anyway, yeah, I just like the setup. So I'm going to hop over and actually just use this. So I've copied their HTML, the starter HTML, and give me just a second. I'll show that. Here we go. So yeah, I mean, just very basic. Here's a starting HTML. So I thought now I could go and look at their example files and just pull. I'll just pull like an entire example over. And then weed out the stuff that I don't care about. So we'll just grab the whole deal. And this is this taking me way back, but building websites and apps and stuff's gotten like super complex these days. But back when I was learning, when I was getting started, like kind of when HTML and CSS and stuff were starting to evolve a bit back in the 90s, this is basically what I would do. I would go look at a site and I would just take markup and I would go and make a page out of it, and probably do the same thing with the CSS once CSS took off. And yeah, it's kind of cool to just start with like some simple output like this and see how things look. I'm trying to see how they're, okay, cool. They're referencing the classless Pico at the CDN. So let's just save that. And then if we hop back over here, should be able to see pretty much the same thing. Yep. So this is kind of interesting. It looks like these are not working. I'm guessing there's some kind of CSS or JavaScript issue. Let's see. Okay, so it's looking for probably at a relative path. It's looking for the theme switcher. So let's check out the code. It's probably the end of the file too. Okay, yeah. So here's our problem. They had a relative path to the theme switcher. So I don't actually know what the right path is, but let's just try this. See if that fixes it for us. I'm going to make this a bit bigger. All right. So if we refresh that, let's see if that works. Okay, let's see what's going on. Okay, so that wasn't the right path. Let's see if we can figure out the right path. So if we inspect this thing, looks like it's going to be examples. So maybe we need to include examples. There we go. So yeah, the way that I figured that out was, hold on, let me get this out of the way. If we look at down here, if we look at the path, it's backing up one directory and then looking for JS minimal theme switcher. And based on the URL, we're currently at like /examples /classless. So the dot dot would back us out to examples, and then I'm just adding on that JS /minimal theme switcher. So that's how I got that to go. And then yeah, here's our local example. And yeah, looks like all this is, you know, functioning the way we would expect it to function. So in general, I'm let's see, the only things I'm probably gonna keep are a very simple form example and probably these examples here for like content. And then I'll leave the theme switcher stuff up there for now. But yeah, tables, accordions, all that stuff. I'm trying to have as little of that as possible. Maybe I'll keep the article example. So yeah, let's just go and like strip out some of this stuff from the HTML and let me get that window so you can see everything that I'm seeing. So here's something related to the progress bar. I'm not going to need the progress bar, so I'm just going to take that script out for now. My footer is going to be different, but let's just leave that in for now. That's fine. So let's get rid of loading, progress. I want to keep an article as an example. I do not need accordions right now. Not planning on having tables right now. Trying to not use tables. I think this is all going to be input related. So I'm not going to have anything for date or time. I don't have anything radio button related. Let's take those out. Checkbox. I may want to have a checkbox because I may have some kind of like opt-in communication thing. Let's take out range slider, file browser, disabled, invalid, valid. I don't. Yeah, don't need. Yeah, I'll just take this out for now. Just trying to get something cleaner going. And those are more common ones. I might leave those in for now. We'll have buttons. Okay, so here's, I want to break this up a bit more. So a little more compact than how I usually write my markup. Yeah, again, here's more tables. I don't need those, so let's get rid of those. Lists, I do use lists pretty often, but yeah, let's just leave that one. Block quotes are good. Preview, I can't remember. Oh, I see. This was just like a section at the top. All right, so yeah, let's play around with that. See what that looks like. Okay, so you can see that shortened things up quite a bit. Well, cool. Yeah, so that's kind of what I was hoping to put together. I think this will probably give me a nice clean start, and I'll probably pull more things out of here, just because I don't have any crazy need for forms yet, and I don't want to have more stuff going on here that I need. Maybe we can just do that quickly and put in some example paragraphs. So I think this whole form I'm just going to get rid of. If I'm going to add one, I'll just look it up, figure out how to do an example. Articles, kind of interesting. It's not. I'm trying to think of how I would use their article. I tend to not like wrapping content in something that's got a whole bunch of like spacing around it. I'm not sure what their intent is on this, unless maybe these were like, I don't know. I just don't know. It's not how I normally do things, but I'm probably more likely just to take advantage of like the typical like heading paragraph structure up here. So yeah, this is getting pretty close. Let me refresh. I removed the forms. And just use my name for now. I'm not sure what this code thing was doing. Let's see. And let's just say JavaScript, TypeScript. No, that's not actually code, but just let's see what the styling does. Okay, yeah, it's just putting the kind of the standard pre-formatted code styling around stuff. So anyway, yeah, pretty happy with this. I think this is going to be the direction that I go. I'll probably switch up. Oof, man, that's hard to look at after looking at the dark version. I'll probably switch up the, I may switch up the font. It's not too bad, but it's a little more decorative in some areas than what I like the G here, for example. Yeah, I'll probably switch up the colors and maybe the font or something. But in general, yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. I tend to like these like minimal CSS setups that just don't don't assume you're building like a gigantic web app. So anyway, yeah, thanks for following along. And as I go, I'll try to record different parts of this as I put the site together. This is obviously the very beginning, but my next steps will probably be just to make a couple sample articles, like really short ones, just to make sure this is gonna work for me. And then when I feel good about that, then I'll probably move on to setting up a site through Gatsby, and actually having it run locally. And then once I've done that, I'll probably look at options for how to host it. So I think the big ones there are like Netlify, Amplify. I don't know. There's several of them, but I'm just going to take it step by step for now, so I don't overwhelm myself with trying to make all the choices up front. And that's like generally something I suggest to people, is just like kind of do. It's good to look at the big picture up front to kind of know what the things are you're going to have to solve for. But if you can just break things down into smaller steps and do one piece at a time, it's just a lot more manageable. So anyway, thanks for watching along, and I will see you in the next one.